Yeah, Bill, let's kick off with, I mean, it's probably the standard question that I've asked so many people already. It's the standard catchphrase by now is how did the pandemic treat you and how has it impacted you?
Well, I have to be pretty honest. A lot of the work that I've been doing lately is just like mixing and mastering
Hmm.
a lot of albums. So to be honest, the pandemic didn't really hit me that hard because there were still bands recording, even all over the country, all over the world, and then just sending me their files to mix or master.
Yes.
So I was very lucky, and I think there were probably a lot of bands that had nothing to do, so they were creating music in their homes. I mean,
Yes.
that's the way it is nowadays. There's a lot of bands that are able to just record themselves, and thank goodness because it did still keep me busy. So
Yeah.
I wasn't impacted as much as a lot of people.
But there's so many pros and cons, really. I mean, a lot of people, I personally find it sad to hear that a lot of big studios have closed down, and that I mean, if I just look about an hour's drive from here, there's Horus Sound in Hanover, and some great German bands recorded there, and it's just history. That nothing really happens anymore. But on the other side, it's gotten really, it's just shifted for a lot of producers. I just talked to someone the other day, and he says it's really shifted for him, and it's really just down to, like you said, mixing. Bands send their tracks and just mix it down and master it.
Yeah, I mean it's way more than a shift. I mean it's just totally upside down. Everything
Yeah,
is completely different. I mean when I started, there's big machines with the tape and
yeah, yeah.
you know now everything is on a computer, and it's kind of hard for me because back in the old days using tape did have a completely different feel, a different sound than
Yes.
all the digital stuff. I mean, I was just thinking about it the other day. Now, I was doing this stuff way before. I mentioned to somebody how there weren't even CDs when I started
Yeah,
making
yeah,
records,
yeah. Of
and some of these kids go, "What? There was a time when there was no CDs?" And yeah, I
course.
worked on tape, and you know, we had to go to studios. We had to pay a lot of money to be in these studios sometimes. And now
But the
to
sales
go
were
to
there. The sales were there.
art,
The sales were there.
yeah, this is true. But uh, I have to be honest. I mean, even though I loved the sound of analog, things now are just more convenient. I mean, like I said, we had these big reels of tape that you pay $250 for, and you got 15 minutes worth of music on it.
Yeah.
Editing, had to take a razor blade, cut that piece of tape, and
Yes.
put things together that way, and it's just it's so much easier now. That if you'd asked me, I wish we would have had all this new technology way back when I started. And I know there's probably a lot of older engineers, producers like me that will say differently, but I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
There's
The
there's
two,
both
the
sides.
tech, yeah. And the other thing that's helped is obviously in a studio, the band had to always come to you, or I had to go. Yeah, most of the time, I guess I would go out and to wherever the band was. I mean, the travel. You had to spend money on that. You had to spend money on the food and hotels and all this stuff. So it's a lot more convenient now. That's for sure. But the flip side is in the old days, I people had to come to me because there's a certain skill to the old ways. There's using the tape, being at the studio. Because of the technology now, everyone can have a studio in their house. So because of that, obviously, there's a lot of jobs that I will miss out on because the bands are doing it on themselves now.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, even though a band can record themselves, a lot of times they'll need someone like me to finish it up, to do the mixing, to do the mastering. And that's probably been at least 80% of my workload lately, is just mixing and mastering.
But from doing that, I've discussed this with someone recently, also from the sound side, and that's we discussed the quality. You know, whereas this new technology can be embraced and it can be used for good, and it can also be abused, because a lot of people criticize the musical proficiency of musicians. And this person that I know works for someone that they do quite a few productions, and he said, Johan, you'd be so shocked to see how many musicians you know from magazines that cannot play the instruments properly. You know, and I have to sort of correct and cut and slice and do one take and paste, copy paste, copy paste. So
yes, well, I guess when it comes to stuff like that, I'm still really old school. I try to use this technology just like it is a tape machine, as much as I can. I think a lot of the music that's coming out now, it's like you said, it seems very sterile because everything is so precise, and
yes,
to me that's boring. So I still act like I am using tape, and I try not to do a lot of that cutting and pasting. But yes, of course, there's going to be some. You do have to think about time. In the old days, um, you'd stop and you'd punch in where the guitar player screwed up, for example. And now you really don't have to do that. You can just play it and you see, oh, that one chord is out of tune. So yeah, sometimes it's easier to just cut and paste, but I don't sit there and make everything precise.
no,
Because to me, like I said, it's sterile. I grew up in the 70s where there wasn't this technology that is in the things that I love about music in the 70s is there was feel. There were those little mistakes and things that made it made the songs and the records more interesting to me.
yes.
The little mistakes and stuff like that, I think people sweat that way too much nowadays.
That's it. And I find a lot of new productions, they sound so, I mean, it takes me about 2 minutes in, and I feel it sounds, like you said, the word is correct, sterile. And it sounds so, there's that human error isn't in there. And the warm,
Yeah, human error, some that makes things interesting.
and the drums are sound like Tupperware. It's really like, it's like these presets. It's just triggered, and I don't know what they do, but it just lacks that live feel. But having said that, there's a couple of bands now emerging from Norway that I've been following, and they really worship the early Slayer albums, Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits, and they really make an effort to capture that atmosphere again. And that is what I find so amazing. It's so what you captured way back then with Slayer and Flotsam and Jetsam and those bands. This is what a lot of these bands are looking for now again. You know, they have to go the digital route probably, but they're using as many analog components as they possibly can to capture it. And they do play it live to capture that energy.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, it still blows me away that some of these kids, these young kids that are into all of that early music because maybe that's what their dads listen to and their
Yes.
parents. So it seems like there is a resurgence of youngsters doing that type of music and that type of feel. So that's awesome. That's one of the great things that's happening in music right now.
No, I can definitely sense that there's a huge resurgence. You can feel it here in Germany with a lot of acts coming up, and there's this sort of counter movement now where they're going back to warmth. It has to have this more DIY feel. It's almost like not bordering on garage, but they want it raw, and that's it. Not too many
Yeah,
overdubs and corrections. Wow.
that's all. Yeah,
But it's the same with yeah. It's really that's what I wanted to ask you as well. I mean but we've basically answered that question already. Is how that must be how you perceive a lot of new files and sounds that you're getting. You can almost probably after a few seconds already tell how it was recorded.
oh, of course, yeah,
And
yeah,
and another thing that I was quite amazed before we did the interview. I put on my old copy of No Place for Disgrace, and amazing. I had it in, and I had my systems on so loud, and I put in something a newer production. I think it was Fear Factory or something, and the loudness. It's amazing how loud albums have become.
yeah.
And
The loudness wars is something that's happening, and I got to be honest. I have been accused of that sometimes,
yeah, well,
So, yeah, that
but
seems to be something that's going on now. And personally, like I said, I've done it. I'm trying to get away from it, but it's
yeah, you
something
have.
about.
I mean, that's the weird part of it. People are now listening to something on a device. You
Yeah,
basically have to create a mix that sounds huge, but so that the end consumers can sort of do this, and it's
yeah. That is
just
what drives me crazy
and it just.
about
But the entire
about this.
production with a lot of these new bands that I've been listening to now it's just so overdriven. There's no dynamic. It's just everything seems to be full throttle. And I think
Yeah,
that's with the older albums where you have, light and dark and loud and soft, and it just doesn't, the dynamics are gone. It's just full blast.
yeah. I mean, uh, I think that is something that I mean, when you're in the digital world, everybody's just downloading now. That there's no hardly anybody. Well, there's no cassettes anymore, and there's sometimes the technology kind of that's one of the problems now. I think you're listening to Spotify and all these
Yeah.
streaming platforms. Everything is so compressed sometimes, and it, it it's a lot different, and I think that's one of the reasons why there is this um, the loudness wars. Like I said, I sometimes can um, be at fault for that. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm trying more than anything to get away from.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I said, I still want to use this technology like it's a tape machine. So I'm still old school. I try to stay away from uh, a lot of the stuff that does make the music sound sterile, And I've been doing a lot of mastering, and sometimes the bands will call for, hey, I want that louder, because they'll compare it to something else, and they'll go, well, it's not as loud as this. Can you turn it up some more? And when it comes to doing my job, I consider myself uh, uh, more as a server, So, in my opinion, I'm there to make the band happy, to get their vision on. I still want to say on tape, but it's not on tape. On the hard drive
Yes.
nowadays. So yeah, if they'll come to me sometimes and say, "Oh yeah, everything sounds good. Can you make it louder?" So I I, I do it to please them.
Mhm.
Like I said, I don't. I think of myself that.
Client is king.
Okay, pardon me.
Client is king.
Yeah, that's the way I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of producers. Every producer is different. You can take a band, have them play the same song with the same instrument, and work with 10 different producers. You're going to get 10 different outcomes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah. I lost my my train of thought
Yeah,
there.
but
But
it's fascinating, definitely. I mean, that's why it's so interesting. But I mean, just to go back a little bit is, and one of the motivating factors for me to contact you and have a show is, I always find there's so much being talked about the bands, and so few people actually talk about the people that actually crafted that sound, and it's a craft. And I've always been a huge admirer, even back way back in Africa, when we, if we managed to get a hold of an original LP. And our first thing was like, who produced it, and it was a kind of a thing between us to know if you knew who produced what album, you really knew your shit, so, so that kind of stuff. So it was always like yourself and Harris Johns and Scott Burns and Randy Burns and whatever. But like you said, definitely you can hear that. There's a certain signature. Some have them really predominant. With some, you can often notice more of a versatility in the productions, which I always think is quite cool. So it doesn't sort of get pigeonholed. But that's
well, yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because the first thing that I always think of when people want to interview me, I'm like, why? Why? Why do you want to interview me? I mean, uh, when it comes to the music, it's the bands that are writing the songs. To me, that's the interesting part. So I do get confused when people. I don't do a lot of interviews, and
okay.
it's because of that. I'm like, well, who the hell wants to talk to me? But the other thing is, if somebody listens to a record that I produce, I would much rather them say, "Oh, okay, that sounds like Flotsam and Jetsam. Oh,
Yeah,
that sounds like
of course.
Circuit Reich."
Yes,
I I try to capture the band and in their feels and their sound, and I don't want to change it.
but
So
in that case, I would say mission accomplished, because that's basically what I was trying to say. It's with you can actually pick out different bands from your catalog, and they don't necessarily sound the same.
good. That's exactly what
I mean, for
what I
me,
want to
a
do.
rigor mortis doesn't sound like a wasp, or it's okay. It's quite a deviation in musical styles, but still, I don't think there's a lot of, put it this way. There's a lot of albums where I wouldn't immediately have said, that's Bill Metoyer. No.
Well, that's good.
And with
That's what I'm shooting for.
someone like Scott Burns, you would probably immediately say, yeah, that's Scott Burns. It's like
Yeah, I
so.
understand. So thank you.
Yeah,
Then
no problem. So you've worked with really, I mean, just for the viewers, you've worked with great acts. We've got Wasp, we've got Flotsam, we've got DRI, we've got Sacred Reich, we've got Armored Saint, um, Lizzie Borden, even Cattle Decapitation. I'm amazed. That's like quite extreme. And some of my all-time favorites, obviously Slayer and Atrophy. But just looking at your bio, I mean, you had quite a steep ascent from entering the production world and then meeting up with Brian Slagle.
yes, I owe my entire career to Mr. Slagle. That's for sure. And yeah, if it wasn't for him, nobody would know who the hell Bill Metoyer was, because I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with all those bands.
Hmm.
And a lot of the bands that I've worked with were Metal Blade Arts. So yeah, thank God for
That's
Mr.
great. I mean,
Slagle.
wow, what an opportunity! I think that's fantastic. And but you're still working with Brian?
Well, it's honestly been a long time before I actually produced a Metal Blade artist. Like, I've worked on the last two Armored Saint records, but that was because Joey Vera was the producer. I didn't produce it at all. I was just an engineer,
Okay.
and that I mean, I love doing that. It's easy, It's oh, you want more high end on that? Oh, okay, anything you say, Joey. He's an incredible producer, and thank God that he asked me to do the last couple of albums. But otherwise, off the top of my head, it's been a long time since I actually did anything that was on Metal Blade.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, in the old days, I mean, I was part of Metal Blade, so I
Yeah.
worked for the company, and so thank God that I did. But that's the reason why I got all those gigs is because yes, I was working at Metal Blade Records. I mean, I started working with Brian just when he had there was one little desk in his mom's garage with a phone there, and I'd go to his house in Woodland Hills and sit there behind the desk and call up radio stations asking them to play the bitch album, the Slayer Show No Mercy and things like that.
For the
So
mentors.
oh yeah, everyone seems to know the Mentors. That still blows me away. But
That was. Can you imagine that today, in this day and age,
no,
with with
no.
gendering and PC and all that?
I mean, they're still around. They're still
Yes,
playing,
yes.
and I've done a couple of recent things with them still, and I do have to say that when people ask me what's probably my favorite band to work with in the studio, I have to say it was the Mentors. I
Okay.
mean, it was just so
Amazing.
fucking funny. I mean,
Imagine.
there's no other way to put it. Most of the time, Mr. Slagle and I would be on the ground laughing hysterically at some of the lyrics and on those Mentors records. And it wasn't all that easy. I mean, I got to be honest. El Duce was one hell of a character, and
Yes, yes, I can imagine.
let's just say he enjoyed his drink. So sometimes he'd come into the studio and he could walk in pretty sober, but man, he'd hit that vodka bottle and just down it. And then when that happened, I figured, okay, I probably only have about a good 20 minutes of working with this guy before he's so shit faced that, there was one time he just fell right on top of his drums. So, yeah,
Wow.
it was a wild time working with the Mentors back then. But I still love those old records with those guys.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, definitely. And are there any? Okay, you don't have to answer this question, but any difficult musos?
Oh God, yes. I mean, that's always gonna come with the territory. Uh, uh, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not too sure
yeah,
if I should name
yeah.
names.
Perhaps not.
Yeah, there's been sometimes where you're dealing with very very big egos.
Mm.
I have worked with a couple of bands where maybe the egos didn't make it too fun.
Yeah, I can.
And
That's
I wouldn't mind telling you,
yeah,
after the interview,
yeah.
because
We can do
you know
that.
you might be able to even guess because
Probably, yeah.
yeah, you could probably guess. So
But
there's a system.
that was probably the fine art. Also, is handling people.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like you got to be a psychologist.
I mean,
So
how do you break it to someone that wasn't clean? Can you you know?
yeah, I mean I could spend 10 minutes with a person and you know how you're going to have to deal with them. So everybody is different. You're going to get the guy that you say one little thing like that, and you're going to bruise his ego and probably never get anything else done that day.
Yeah,
So you have to. Uh, that's a big thing when it comes to the job. Is you got to play psychologist. Uh, I mean, even the, the way people in the bands are getting together. I mean, there's a lot of fights in the studio and stuff like that. You got to calm people down. I mean, Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to deal with so many different personalities. I've been in the studio where blows have been had. You got to
Wow.
step between the people and separate them and sit them down and try to calm everybody down. So yeah, that's
Crazy.
a big part of this job. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And well, there's many stories out. I mean, like, also not mentioning names, but like in the golden days of LA, where musicians had to have been told, you can't play your instrument. We're going to get someone in to do it.
Yeah.
So that's also been done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I I deal with that every once in a while because yes, I could be with a band for 10 minutes and you go, okay, well, uh, this guy is a really good guitar player over here, but this guy maybe not so great. And I might have to go to them and say, hey, I think maybe this guy ought to just do his rhythm tracks and double them, and then you do your leads. And to be honest, that is one of the ways I do like to do things sometimes. But you go to the second guitar player and say, hey, I just want you to do the leads, and you're they might get hurt. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to deal with things like that. That's
But
for
often
sure.
it's a thing of just you have a certain technique of playing, and it's better to double that than have two sort of rhythm fields over each other. You're always going to get a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I mean,
There's probably very few bands where both guitarists are so proficient that they on that. I mean, I think I'm guessing maybe James Hetfield does all the rhythms,
yes,
and
he does, and
Kurt
that's
just
why
does
the
the lead.
Metallica, yeah, the Metallica sound, those rhythm tracks are so friggin' tight because he's a damn good rhythm player and he's just doubling himself. So, for the sake of the sound and everything, that is the way I do like to do most of the records. But then again, there's sometimes where the two people um, are, it sounds great. It's almost that AC/DC type of sound. If you listen to the AC/DC records, those
Yeah,
guys,
solid.
the young brothers weren't even doing the same thing, but I mean, it was just
And it's
magical.
just
So,
solid.
but
Yeah.
it's hard to find that type of the two rhythm guitar players that are like that. So
Mm.
yeah,
I can imagine
it's
that.
not a
I can imagine that being the case with Ahmed Saint as well. That it's both guitarists are actually so damn good at both disciplines. But
yeah, and a lot of times it depends on the song too.
yeah, yeah,
That's another thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you don't want to reveal a lot of secrets. But
no,
yeah, in this last Armored Saint record, yeah, both guitar players, Jeff and Phil, are very good guitar players. But for example, Jeff's other band, Jeff Duncan from Armored Saint, has a band called DC4,
yeah.
and it's him and his two brothers and Rowan Robertson, who
Oh, from
is,
Dio.
yes, Rowan
Okay.
is in DC4, and it's Rowan. He was in Dio for the love of Pete, but Jeff Jeff will do the rhythms,
Yes.
and then Rowan will just come in and do his leads. But Rowan actually does. Even Rowan prefers that. He's always saying, I'm not a picker. I'm not a strummer. That's what he. I'm not a strummer. I'm a picker.
I'm a picker.
So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
it
I think
and it,
that's the most adult way to deal with it. Really, it's I think.
yeah, because that man has no ego whatsoever. He's one of the nicest guys that I've ever met. I thank God that I've got to work with him outside of DC4. I consider him one of my dearest friends. So he's just a nice guy. He knows what's best for the project. And
Yeah, that kind of vision is often lacking.
yeah,
To see the bigger
exactly.
picture and what's best for the product.
Yes. So that's what I try to do when I walk into a situation. The bigger picture is, hey, I think it's going to sound best if this guy just
Mm.
does all the rhythms.
Yeah.
And if the other person, um, if they get butt hurt, then there's no problem. Okay, well let's have you do the rhythms, but this guy's still going to double his, and let's compare. That
Yeah.
that's what happens if the second guitar player objects. Then I'd say, okay, let's do it both ways and see what turns out.
The tape don't lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Oh, wonderful. So I was amazed to see that you actually did the last. It's quite a while back already. Again, Evil Dead.
Yes,
That they actually,
I did.
wow. Oh, it's always great to see. That there's some. So any anything exciting coming up
Uh, well,
that
I'm in
you're
the
allowed
middle
to
of.
speak about, of course.
Pardon me.
That you're allowed to speak about, of course.
Anything great? I don't think anything great. I mean, no blockbusters in the future that I could mention, but I'm doing in the middle of two records right now, just some local bands.
Okay.
One is called Brute Force. I've done their last record, and I'm working on this band right now called Talus, finishing them up. They're another LA band. The singer,
Talus. Is this the Talus?
no, no,
Not the
not the Billy Sheehan
Galicia.
Talus.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
No, and what else? Yeah, I'm working with this band called Yidra, and I've worked with them. I think this is the third or fourth time I'm working with them. A doom band
Okay.
that that are from LA. So those are the projects that I'm working on now. There's always little mastering jobs that come in. There was a band called Tourniquet that I've worked with
Yes. Yes.
in the
Yes. Yes.
past, and like three of the guys that used to be in Tourniquet are started a band that Flood now. So I just mastered the Flood record. It just came out 2 days ago. So
Cool.
that's one of the projects that people ought to be looking for. Is Flood is out there right now, and it's a really good record.
I need to
Um,
check that out.
yes, it's very. You can hear Tourniquet in it. That's for sure. So
Right.
if you're a fan of the band Tourniquet, I think you'd enjoy. You'd really enjoy
Yeah.
this Flood.
I'm familiar with it with their work. Yes.
Well, look for that one. It is out right now. So
They're a Christian band, huh? Yeah.
they're a Christian
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
Flood continues with the Christian messages.
Steve,
So yeah.
yeah. I will check them out definitely. um, is there anyone? Now you've worked with so many people. You can't possibly have a wish open, but if you could still work with anyone, if you had a wish open.
Oh, there's a million of them. I mean, I've never worked with Metallica. I'd love to work with them. Um, my biggest wish was, my God, if the real Black Sabbath ever got together, that would be the ultimate. I mean, Black Sabbath is the reason why I got into this business. I guess they are my all time favorite metal band. That's for sure. So, oh my God,
Yeah,
I'd
for a
love to
lot of
work.
people, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands that I admired that I'd love to work with. I'd love to do anything with Dave Grohl. I love that man.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that you
Didn't
know.
he buy up that Neve desk
Yes, he did,
from
from
Rock City
Sound
or
City.
Sound City?
Yeah,
That's it.
and he is a metal fan too. He
Yeah.
had the Probot project where
Yes.
he worked with a lot of metal guys. Hell, it was something. A lot of people that I worked with was on his Probot record. So yeah, I'd love to work with him one day. That's for sure.
So that'd be an awesome experience, definitely.
Yes,
Great.
I see that Voivod shirt that you have on, right?
Yeah,
I remember those guys.
love them. Love them.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's
they,
awesome that a lot of the people are still listening to the old stuff.
yes,
That's
absolutely. I think the time at the moment, I can only probably I can probably mostly speak for Germany and the surroundings here, but metal is healthy, and it's there are so many thrash bands emerging now. There's a couple of bands that have sent me their CDs and sound files. It's amazing. It's really active, and
yeah. Well, the German people have always embraced the metal
yes,
scene
that's
way more than us here in the U.S.
yeah. It's died down in the US quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, the Germany knows their metal and their beer. I always say
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's
that.
other countries emerging like Greece and obviously South America has always been quite
Yeah,
crazy, and it's good to see that it's still alive and kicking.
exactly. The other thing for me is I'm still working with some of the same bands that I worked with 35 years ago. I mean, um, the Evil Dead guys. I've known them forever for over
Yeah,
30 years.
one.
Bands like, yeah, Juan, Mr. Gar. I just spoke to him yesterday. Um, he's one of my dearest friends. I did a Tyrant record that came out in 2021, and
Yes, yes, yes. I do recall.
again, 35 years ago, I worked with those guys.
Legends, legends. No, your list reads like a who's who. Even Laz
Yes.
Rocket, I see. Wow, crazy. No, it's that's the stuff I grew up with. So and oh, a little interesting one is I might, if all things work out, I might have a little talk with Brian Zimmerman
Oh, yeah.
of Atrophy. So if all things work out,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
I really enjoyed working with those guys. I mean, I think that's, some of the once in a while, I mean, I really don't like listening to anything that I produced. I don't. I can listen to those Atrophy records. That's for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they were definitely one of the favorites that I've worked with.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
they
think about there's something about these Arizona bands that I guess I really liked. I mean, between
absolutely.
that between them, Flotsam and Jetsam and Sacred Reich,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Have always been my faves as well. But apparently, Atrophy are working on something new, eh?
I've been in touch with them a couple of times over the years. So yeah,
But we'll
yeah,
hear.
it's awesome that all these guys are still playing and still getting together. Sometimes there might be 20 years before they get together, but it's cool that they are getting back together and
Look,
seeing the resurgence.
it's always I have a huge load of respect for guys that my age and beyond that still manage to get a band together to do it. I
Yeah,
mean, you reach a point in life where other things take priority, and where you really have different worries. You're not that young anymore. You can't be all devil may care and just go for it. And that's why I
no,
have a
not
hell of a
really.
lot of respect for musos that are still active and doing it. It's really hats off.
Yeah, it's not exactly a money making. It never has
No,
been a huge money making situation. You grow up, you get married, you have kids and mortgages, and
yes, yes.
you need real jobs.
And
So
it's not a
uh,
case of honey, I'm going on the road. It's just no.
yeah, I mean,
So I guess what a lot of the bands are doing is you just for the fun of it. Number one, you've got to do it for love and passion, and
amen.
And if
I
you're lucky,
tell everybody,
yeah,
I tell everybody that don't get into this if you want to be rich. Do
yeah,
it because for the passion, because you love making music.
that's it.
It's a lot more fun that way too.
Yes, and then you don't get disappointed on the
Yeah,
end.
yes. There's one thing I do like to do is when I'm working with a band, I still try to make it fun. You know,
Yes,
you don't want it to be a burden. You want you want to have fun in the studio.
yes, and you want that
It
fun
is
to
fun.
cross over, eh?
Yes,
And
yes,
with a lot of bands, I can hear it. You know, if you can actually hear if they had a lot of fun and if the level was there and the power and
yeah.
comes across.
I think so. Yes, and like I said, that's what I try to. I hope that's the ultimate outcome. That this sounds like a band that is actually up there on stage playing and having fun when
Yes,
someone listens to something that I've produced. That's
yes.
for sure.
No, that's the fine art, hey?
Exactly. At least in my book, it is.
Bill, I'm gonna let you go because
I
I think
might have to go back to bed. Hell,
you're gonna lie down again.
got me up so darn early. But
Well,
thank you for this.
I thank you, humbly. What I would like to do is post a couple of links below the video. So if you have something really important that you would like to punt, I'll obviously have this. I have the Skull 7 link. I don't know if you've got something else.
Uh, well, the skull, the link. I guess I prefer the Facebook
Yeah,
link
yeah.
only because that damn my website is so outdated. It's ridiculous.
No, that good that you tell me that. Then I will only upload that. But if you've got something, sleep over it. If you've got something, just drop me a mail and I'll put it in. I won't be posting it immediately anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah. When do you think you would be posting?
I'm looking at. I'm always timing it a little bit when people are more receptive. So I'm aiming at this coming Friday.
Okay.
You know, during the week it sort of gets lost a little bit in translation
Yeah.
somehow, and people are like all over the show.
Is what seems to be the best as far as use? See, when are most people still doing the Facebook links or no?
Um, you mean in terms of getting
Yeah,
yourself
getting
out
it
there?
out to the public. Or it's just your YouTube channel.
It's YouTube. I do a lot of just probably a little. No, it's not unorthodox. Actually, there's a couple of people on TikTok
Hmm.
now. So what I do is I trim a short version, basically an intro where we exchange a few words and just put that up as a teaser on TikTok, basically, because you only have a short amount of time there, and people's attention spans are incredibly slow anyway. So
Oh yeah,
if it doesn't go bang and boof in the first few seconds, they skip it, you know. But so I use a combination of Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok
very cool.
to
Yeah,
get it out there. But
I'm
yeah,
on all of those.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anything that you know, I know everything that I say is not so exciting. So please edit the shit out of it if you want.
No, 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 no. I don't want to. I don't want to
No, that's
falsify
fine with
anything.
me. Like I said, man,
No,
I don't
it's
understand why people ask for interviews. So I'm not used to this, you know. I'm not. I don't, especially this new technology, the Zoom crap. You know, if somebody gives me a bunch of questions that I just type it out and I get to think, I'm okay with that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
am
yeah.
not quick to wit. So that's why I usually
But
stay away from this type of thing.
I
And
can understand that as well. I can understand that. But
yeah, so
just to give you a bit of a feel, and I go to quite a few festivals and speak to people all around, and especially at least in my circles here. a lot of the talk with music is not only about the band itself. Of course, it's like, oh, new album or that album. Do you remember that album? Or and a lot of the talk is about who produced it, and that's why
Makes no sense to me.
it fascinates metalheads. It fascinates metalheads. So
Yeah, I have to admit, when I was a kid, there was some records that I had to turn over and go, "Wow, who did
who
this?"
did
Like
this? Yeah.
all the Queen records
Yes. Yes.
and things like Dark Side of the Moon and albums like that.
Yeah,
So
that was crazy.
yeah, I do. I guess I do understand that part, but I just figured there wasn't that many of us,
There's more than you think. But I guess nobody picks up a Katy Perry album and goes, "Who produced it?"
Yeah.
It's like kind of cares.
There you go. Yeah,
Who?
I got to meet Roy Thomas Baker. I mean, one of the
Oh, amazing!
greatest things in my life is I got to when I was doing the Flotsam and Jetsam record because No Place for Disgrace, Michael Wagner mixed that album. And where we mixed it, Roy Thomas Baker was in the next room over. And Roy and Michael are good friends. So I got to have lunch with those two guys that I just looked up to, that
Oh,
were
amazing!
mentors to me. That was fun.
That
That
is
was
so cool.
the greatest times of my life, that's for sure. So, yeah, I know what it is, but I've always said I don't think there's that many of us around. But
Oh,
maybe I
there's
was wrong.
they are.
But
Bill,
God, that seemed more interesting than anything that I said earlier.
no, man, it's everything for me has been really amazing. It's a bit of a dream come true for me. Like I said, I always followed the albums, and it's always been fascinating to me. Who's behind it? It for me, it's part of the craft. So,
Well, let me ask you this: if you had to guess who the ego was in my catalog, who would you
shall
guess?
shall I cut record?
Well, as long as you don't, Oh yeah, so we could just talk and yeah, cut
Yeah, I'll
record.
just cut record.